everyone. Welcome to Keeping It Real with TNL. I'm Coach Lori here with the exceptional Coach Ty. And today we have Coach Tim with us. We're going to talk a bit about nutrition.
Absolutely, guys. But before we dive into that, we are going to be making another announcement. We have another small group women's strength training that's going to be kicking off Tuesday, September 23rd. The thing about this one, guys, this is going to be in the evening time. So the hours are going to be 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. and it's going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So 2 days a week. So this one should be a little bit more convenient for those who wanted an evening time slot. But not only that, it's going to be 2 days a week. So it should be much easier to fit into your schedule. But that doesn't mean that we are not going to get you guys the results that you're looking for. So make sure you guys are keeping an eye out. And just like all of the MetFix method programs, these will be limited to 6 individuals. So if you want to get involved in this upcoming strength program, start thinking about it now. Let Coach Lori know. You can reach out via email or Instagram DM. Let's get it going.
Get it going. All right. So Stronger, Better, Faster is going to be an epic program. Again, it's fully comprehensive. So not only are we going to build strength, we're going to balance hormones. We're going to check that blood work beginning and end. We're going to have customized nutrition for you. Great programming. You'll have access to Wi-Fi. You're going to track all of your lifts and all the progress that you make. 3D body scans beginning and then at the end of every 4 weeks. The end of the program. 13 weeks of exceptional health, wellness, and fitness. Build strength, feel your best. I really can't wait for this one. So let's fill it up.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Let's fill that one up. Like that.
I'm excited for this one.
Yeah. So like I said, I was going to say too, it's one of those things too, because since we've launched some of these small programs, at first, I'm not going to say that I was hesitant, but to see the buy-in that we've had and to see some of the results that have come from this particular style, keeping it very close, having the same coach, having someone with you this entire time, I'm actually seeing how that can create a different effect and also keep the momentum going forward, keep the motivation up. And working with a coach who gets to see you every day, you guys get to know each other. You guys start to build that trust, and it's easier to learn how the client is feeling, how they're doing, and you can make those adjustments there. Those are some of the things that you usually don't get when you're not doing a small group. So I completely love that.
Awesome.
You know, so a men's program, that's the rumor. There's a men's program that's going to be rolling out. So Tim, you obviously went to the MEFIC seminar in Santa Cruz, got to get all that gold science and info about how the body works and how food works and the mission to fight chronic disease. So you started considering too, doing a men's program, but not only that, you're also writing a book now on mitochondria health. So I want to kind of break it down. What inspired you to kind of take this route? And let's talk about the book and kind of how this whole entire thing started and evolved.
Yeah, so the book is something that it's actually been kind of bugging me on the back of my mind for a long time. There's a lot of stuff. Actually, I was thinking about it yesterday, and I first heard the term mitochondria, I think was, or maybe not the first time I heard it, but the first time I related to its importance was back, I think it was 15 years old. And Jim Galanis, who was a Olympic cross-country skier, was by then a coach, and he was doing lactate testing. So he's taking, I remember, blood out my ear, my fingertip in between roller ski intervals, and building a lactate curve, and told me about, okay, if you train in this point, it's going to make your mitochondrial density go up, which will give you more efficiency. So that was the first thing I heard about that. And that was kind of beginnings of things. Later, as we got into different nutritional stuff, I was kind of hitting Dr. Weston Price's book, Nutrition, Physical Degeneration, had a really big effect on me as far as seeing the physical evidence of what the Western diet did to native populations around the world and everything there. So, and then a book that came off of that, Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon, was talking about how the traditional development of foods, doing things like soaking, fermenting, different things like that, how that affects the nutrients and how everything goes together. And so there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on there. And then we fast forward into, I went through some interesting things in dietary back in the 80s. I did a little bit with Sometimes some work from Nathan Pritikin. He did a book, the Pritikin diet, and I was following that. Now, I'll give him credit that I wasn't following it exactly, so it's not exactly, I can't blame it all on Pritikin, but the initial thing was it's a high carbohydrate, low fat diet. And so with that, it was one of my friends from ski racing who actually was on the back cover of his book. So he won world championship triathlon medal. And I was in there. So he's somebody that I really respected. And so I was like, okay, Josh is doing this, then this is probably good. I'm going to probably get faster if I do it too. So it's good. I trusted, kind of trusted his decision on that. And so basically what happened over the next several years was I found myself kind of in this crazy inflammatory storm that I had no idea what was going on. So I ended up with chronic sinus infections just recurring. One season, I went through 5 rounds of bronchitis that I had to be on antibiotics while I was racing all the time. And so that was with all of the bronchitis going on, like I was racing at nationals, bronchitis. And I was like, it's a crazy thing through that year. And so then I actually ended up having some trouble with my eyesight, where I realized how bad it was one day. I was following a U-Haul truck down the road, and I couldn't read what was on the back of the U-Haul truck. And so I was having all these kind of crazy sort of symptoms going on. And part of that was probably due to the fact that I was painting houses at the time. So I was getting a lot of chemical exposure on top of that stuff. So a lot of stuff going on. But dietarily, in the high carbohydrate, low fat, I was doing things like I was using, canola oil was one of my primary oils at the time, which now we're seeing a lot of things where that was kind of a bad choice. So I bought a bread maker and a pasta maker. And so I was doing all these things with, making pasta and doing that.
Ridiculous.
And then there was something, it's like, okay, get a little bit more protein in from a lean source. And so, we'll dump a little bit of vital wheat gluten into the bread and make that a little bit stronger that way. And so as I look back on it now, I can see kind of where those things were leading to my problems of inflammation and stuff. So, and I'm not saying that was exactly the way that Pritikin said to do it, but it was something where I kind of took that high carbohydrate, low fat thing and took it down, kind of the wrong road that ended up leading to a lot of problems. So I was kind of crazy.
No. It's already easy with the high carb, low fat. So that even thank God if you didn't follow it to a T, because you might have been sicker. That's my guess.
Yeah. I was going to ask about health.
No, I was just going to say the thing he had for his credits, he mostly was recommending Whole Foods. And so I just kind of get on that. But it's like Whole Foods, except for the grains and process and all that. But I was like, okay, it didn't work out so well for me.
Didn't quite work out. So obviously, but this is one of those things that I completely love about you is you are always someone who is willing to test these things out. And that's something that I honestly love. So you could speak to it. Now, with that said, did you notice anything about your actual body other than feeling sick? Was there any other physical changes that you noticed by following that?
In the beginning, you kind of feel like your tank's full. You feel like you're always ready to race. Everything's there. So you always got this overload of carbohydrates. So you always kind of felt ready to fall. And you're ready to go all the time. And then an interesting thing happened is that I learned about the zone diet. And so it's like, we're seeing, as I was reading about the zone diet, there was like a collegiate swim team. They ended up putting a lot of people, I think they put a lot of people on the Olympic team or something like that. It was like this really high performing collegiate swim team that he was working with that all their numbers were improving. So I'm like, okay, well, let's move into this. This is the new science. This is where I should go.
What would have been about what year was this?
This would have been around late 90s, 99 to 2001, probably somewhere in that ballpark. I think is kind of when I started to jump into that. When I went into that one, what I noticed is even though I didn't feel as topped off all the time from all the carbohydrates, my performance improved dramatically.
So some changes.
So it's not about like feeling like you're ready to go necessarily isn't the thing, as far as like having the tank full like that isn't going to make that difference. But what it did is it brought me down into a better balance of carbohydrate, fat, protein, where now I was a little bit more balanced than I was with that. And so that made an improvement. And so that was something there. And then I was able actually to maintain a lower race weight, which also improved my racing. So all of a sudden I was able to drop down the weight. It was better. So I was able to climb hills much faster and things like that.
So that alone, just by switching from the high carb, low fat, and then trying zone, you automatically said, but it was cool. You may not have always felt like you were ready to go, but your performance across the board was consistently better than when you were on the other diet.
Yes. Yeah. So I was basically, everything's kind of improved. And then I did have a problem with, at one point I had some problems with cramping, and I kind of backed off of it because I had heard that it had something to do with hydration levels not being as high when you're on a higher protein and fat diet. And so something where I had heard that, and I backed off of it. And then it was actually, as I look back on it with what I know now, the dietary things I've done since then, that was something that would have been easy to get if I worked it a different way. But yeah, that was a definite improvement in performance. So that was kind of the first step towards like, okay, this tells us a lot about the metabolic diets, right? Is the difference between going into this high carb situation, which for me was a nightmare, that it happened in a way that I didn't realize that was the diet that was doing it. And that's one of the big things with diets I find is that we don't really realize the damage that's being done. It's being done from the diet. We start to feel like, oh God, it's, this is going wrong, that's going wrong. But we don't realize it's from the food we're taking in. We just think, oh, I must be around a lot of sick people and not knowing it or something, you're like having these problems and you don't really realize where it's coming from. And that's been, kind of the experience we're going through is that these things are slow. They kind of creep up. And it's like, okay, you don't really feel it's like, oh, I got hit by a truck or anything like that. It's just like a subtle change. That's over months or even years. And so that's not good.
So now that we're moving on from kind of that, the other thing that I just want to kind of touch on, since you are writing a book about food, and I know that you've done other diets and whatnot. So when you did the low carb, low fat, that was, you said you were a little bit younger and it was during your skiing days. Did you kind of stick like that through that time up until zone? Or what was your like non-racing style of kind of eating and living? Or were there any rules that you actually kind of stuck to?
It was one that I stuck pretty close to that probably for a couple of years. And then I kind of fell off a little bit. Didn't really, it's like, I think is the feeling of, benefit wore off from basically, I switched into probably having a bit more whole foods and certain things there. So you generally see an uptick in energy. You hear that from people who do all kinds of crazy diets where they do things, but they just, they shut out some of the junk and different things, and they're going to feel better for a little while. Yeah. And so I had that experience, where you're like, okay, things are starting to get better, but, a lot of that, and this will actually tie back into some of the things that are going on in the book too, is that there's more things driving the mitochondria than a lot of people realize. And so it's something that we're diving into. And that's something that, there's the different food factors in there that can be important in the overall mitochondrial performance, basically, of that. So that's something as I went through into paleo, into some keto, and now I've been doing some carnivore, different things playing around with to try and find the balance of everything. And so that's something that I've started to kind of build what that is.
So early 2000s, you're in 70, then you open CrossFit San Ramon in 2008. So they talk about zone and paleo.
Right.
Yes. So that's when you started paleo?
Yeah, actually, when I started CrossFit, they were zone. So they were zone. Yeah, they were full on.
They were in the zone.
They were in the zone. That was it. So
in the zone.
The zone. And so that was like, for me, that was kind of the resurgence because I'd been on zone, like I said, around 2001 to 2000. 3 maybe or something like that. And then I kind of tapered out into kind of, some other, just, not as restrictive eating, I guess I'd call it that, zone where you're doing blocks. So this much protein goes with this much fat and this much carbohydrate, and you always have them together and all that. So it's a very kind of concise way of eating your macros.
Yeah.
And then with zone, I got to the point where I could walk into a gas station, pick out some nuts and this and that, take a piece of fruit next to the stand and eat a zone meal in a gas station.
Just like that.
And so you're just like, you find ways that you can do that. So it's just something there, which I think is, one of the things that made it so it's easier for me to follow at the time doing that. So
Oh yeah, CrossFit's always been. I remember because in the L1 it obviously talks about zone. That's one of their go-to. So the fact that we're doing that and seeing some of those actual performance results prior to it being L1 is a big difference. Right.
So then, oddly enough, what happened there is I went to CrossFit's nutrition certification, which at the time was being done by Rob Wolf. And so Rob Wolf had started his research into paleo. He was one of the really big voices of paleo and earlier into the paleo movement. And he started to teach paleo, and he mixed paleo in with the zone teachings of CrossFit. And I think that may have actually been part of why the CrossFit and Rob ended up having a split, was because of some disagreements and things happened there at one point. But it was something that is, as Rob had just a ton of scientific evidence and things on paleo. And as I was listening to him, it made a lot of sense with paleo, just getting back to kind of our ancestral foods is the concept where you're eating the foods as you would eat them from nature. So when I think of paleo, I really think of, if you can't pull it out of the ground and eat it, it's not for you, So if I have to go through a lot of preparation, like grains or something like that, that's not a food that you would choose in the wild if you had to go out there and survive, So I think of paleo as being something like if you get dropped off in the woods or the jungle or whatever, you're going to live off of what's there, and that would be what I would think is paleo. So paleo, that went on for that was several years. I think it was probably close to years of fairly strict paleo on that. And that was probably the first time that I had noticed a big difference in inflammatory problems. A lot of things cleaned up, it's just like, so I stopped having sinus issues. I stopped having that, because up until then, even through zone and all that, I still had kind of these recurring sinus issues. I was fortunate enough after the whole episode with Critican that I went to a doctor who was Eastern Western mix of things, and she mixed up tinctures and gave me shots into the middle of my forehead, into my sinuses and all this kind of stuff, and kind of got everything to calm down to the point I could do that. I figured out it was a sinus problem, not a bronchial problem. So I lived on Sudafed for the next 5 years. Because I was just trying to stop it. See how to stop the sinus. And so that was something there. But with paleo, for the first time, a lot of those problems cleared up. So I saw a lot of benefit. My eyes and for different things started to happen where it's like, okay, there's some things. And I had found things that
Like vision?
Yeah, the vision was, well, basically what I get like blurred vision and stuff that was happening when I had all the inflammatory stuff going on. And so that was something that blurred vision and some of that improved. So I didn't have much of an issue with that. So, that was good. And this was all back before I hit 47, having my glasses. Now my vision's going the other way, but that was it. Those were the days. But anyways, but a lot of those inflammatory problems went away with paleo. And then over the course of the next several years, it basically started to diminish. And I would equate that basically to the paleo foods that are out there. Because all of a sudden, there was paleo cereal on the market, and there was paleo this on the market, paleo that. So what they did is they started to, kind of the long arm of industrial food reached into the paleo basket and started dragging us
Sure did.
out of it. They pulled us out into these false foods that were labeled for us. And so, it's something where, yeah. I mean, I was suckered into that. It's like everybody loves a good bowl of paleo cereal. That's it.
No, you can't argue that.
Crunch.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
I want that. And of course, my ancestors have that. That makes sense.
Yes, they did.
We found all the artifact bowls.
Yeah,
Cereal.
exactly. That's what it was.
Right,
No.
right next to the Macedon. Yeah, so that was it. So that was something where the benefit of paleo kind of wore off as those things increased, and as we learned more, people started say, hey, coconut sugar is paleo, and this is paleo, and that's paleo. Okay.
Tequila.
Your tequila, so let's have some more fructose. So all of these things started to kind of like add up into this basically turning paleo back to SAD, the standard American diet. It's like pulling it back closer and closer.
Click the foot on paleo.
Yeah, and so
They did, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was like kind of long, but when it first started, and all you had to eat were meats, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, up fruit. Which of course this is the original prescription of CrossFit, even back when we were teaching zone: meats, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. Little fruit. Some starch, no sugar was kind of the basis, and so that really is pretty much paleo. And now with Netflix, we've found there's a slight flop in part of that. What is the new again?
It's some fruit, little starch, no sugar, no sweetener.
Yeah. So we've had a little changes. We've learned more about stuff with Netflix on that. So it's a slight change on there.
That's still small.
It's
big veggies.
Yeah, it's still the meat veggies. What it is that the biggest changes in that was the understanding around seed oils, that we do really need to avoid those. And the second piece being that the high fructose in fruit is actually in many ways worse than doing some starch. And so on the some starch end of it, there's room for that. And that's actually something that we'll be going into the book as well, is a little bit of what goes on with starch here. And so that was kind of the paleo. And after that.
So one quick thing to point out, because Tim will talk about this with his ideas on nutrition, there's once you say you're eating something, everything else is not available. You just cut that off, right? So the seed oils, until Medfix, got a piece of gluten-free bread, it's made with canola oil. It's just a little bit. And then you learn about the Ross hypothesis, and you're like no wonder why I couldn't, seriously, it's funny because you'll see people with food aversions, secondary allergies. Obviously, hopefully people with peanut allergies do not think a little peanut's okay. I don't think they do. But we're always looking for, it's okay. I've had a hard day. It's just a little bit. I mean, it's just a grande pumpkin spice latte, 17 scoops of sugar. It's just one time. But it really affects you down with mitochondria, right? So then all the people that come to us with illness or the inability to lose weight, which gets worse. I mean, you've been here for years, so you've watched people kind of work through stuff, and then they're just like, I'm gaining weight, I can't stop, or I can't lose it, or da-da-da. And you're like, the canola oil is as big as an offender as sugar, as a fruit, and fruit is still sugar. So don't think that your bowl of watermelon at the picnic is okay with corn on the cob and steak that's not even grass-fed. You're just literally taking your system. But that's where Medfix, people that haven't gone through the seminar or haven't been lucky enough to talk to the three of us about food or the Monday Fix, they just don't know what they don't know. But if they read it, it would be really hard for them to be like,
yeah, absolutely.
This is a weekend bender of canola oil and fruit and sugar and alcohol. You're like, Jesus Christ, yeah.
Yeah,
so
absolutely think twice. And then the other thing too is that if people were more aware of how they functioned, they would obviously notice it. Like you clearly said, you noticed an uptick in sinus infections and other type of medical things that were taking place based off the food. Most people have been sick and feeling bad for so long they don't even know what good health feels like. So they just think that, oh, this is normal. It's just allergies. I'm just
getting old.
Yeah.
James,
Full
get
excuse.
old.
That's what they justify.
Yeah.
They justify. The truth is that what you're eating is basically making you sick. You're consuming foods that don't benefit you, that don't help you, and aren't giving you.
Because it does one of two things: it builds your health or it tears it down. And it's not like a middle ground. It's not like, hey, gray area.
Yeah.
That every Friday and Saturday into Sunday that I party is okay. Because the other 4.5 days I don't. And your body's like,
nope.
So what you two are saying is that we're not supposed to be sick?
no.
No, I know. It's so crazy.
No,
I don't obviously think that.
And then people look at you crazy when you're like, they're like, you're so happy. You feel really good all the time. You haven't been sick in 5 years and you never got COVID. And you're like, spoiler alert. Literally. Like, yeah. No, I know. It's
a big secret that we always talk about. We've been keeping it to ourselves.
Yeah.
Now the cat's out.
Cat's out of the bag. There's your magic pill.
Then you won't be sick.
But I really like the point that Lori brought up on, that once it's off the table, it's not hard to avoid, right? And so if I get to the point, it's like, we've been doing a little bit with carnivore here for several weeks.
Yeah.
And as we go into carnivore, that is actually the easiest of all diets in some ways, because it's like there is very, very clear definition of what you eat and don't eat. And so by limiting it down just to animal foods, it was something where it's like, well, there's no question, that's a plan. It's like it's easy,
Exactly.
And now I don't have to, think about, well, maybe this once or whatever, because it's not there. So we're able to separate it. That's something I talk to people about. You want to have this reframing of things. And so the reframing is that, when I'm on carnivore, plants are not food. And so I don't look at them and desire them the same way that I would if it was an option. Right? If it's not an option, I'm looking at it as a viable thing. It's like, okay, now I have to decide, do I eat this? Do I not eat this? What am I doing? And if it's like, and this is one of the problems with, that a lot of people have with things like cheat meals and stuff like that. It's like, do I have the, who's the one that does the huge ones, the like steakhouse thing. It's got the big desserts, I think.
Oh, damn. No, you're at the restaurant with a 7-layer cake?
Yeah.
Flame jumper?
The flame
No,
jumper.
flame jumper, 7-layer
Yeah,
cake.
it's like, all right, I can
Just go to the one in Concord.
I can have my flame jumper cake, and it's like a whole cake, but it's just one slice, but it's not, no, but
It's
it's kind of
like
like
people be
it's an
still
option.
like, it's my cake, it's my piece.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, we're caught in between, it's like, am I going to have one bite? Am I going to have this whole thing? Am I going to, where am I at? Because it's and so until I can take whatever it is that I have dietarily and turn that into a belief system that allows me to say, this is no longer food. I would no sooner eat the box than I would the pizza that came in. If I can get to that point, then it's easy. But that's not necessarily easy for people to get to that point. It's a step to get to that point. But to me, that's the thing that makes it so it's not a disciplined choice. It's actually just a principle of what you do, how you live.
Yes.
And that makes life easier. I mean, it's kind of like we were talking the other day about, there's things that are hard and things that are easy, but it's like, is it really, it's hard to work out all the time. Well, is it really harder to get up and drive to the gym than it is to get up and drive to a coffee shop? I mean, does it take any more energy to get out of bed and drive to the gym than it does to drive to the coffee shop? It's just a choice of where you're going to go and what you're going to end up doing to get there. That wasn't hard. It's just a matter of we manufacture hard.
Yeah.
This is the thing we do with diets. So, yeah. And then,
I completely love that because you're absolutely right. There is no difference between waking up to get out of bed and drive to the coffee shop, sit in line, grab a coffee, and walk you back in the car and get home to the same exact
effort it takes to get out of bed, put on shoes, come here to the gym, listen to the coach, and then go.
Yeah. I mean, it's
your mindset towards it.
yeah. It's just basically, and the thing is, we get caught up on on all the stuff outside of that. Oh, I don't feel like I want to start working out. I don't want to do this. I don't want to eat. I don't want to not eat that. That's usually the thing. Not about I don't want to eat that. It's I don't want to not eat that. That's the thing that gets people. I was like, don't take that away from me.
Yeah.
You're like,
You're that all the
it's
time.
like you're trying to
The
take.
behavioral aspect.
It's like you're trying to take a tennis ball from a border collie or something. It's like,
But like you said, it is one of those things that definitely does take time, and it's not everyone reaches that point if they do on their own. I was talking to Lori about that last week. My journey to understanding that food is nothing more than fuel. Hold on, let me tell the backstory. I heard that quote. I had to be maybe 19 years old, and I heard somebody tell me that, and I was like, "How do you live your life? What an idiot! You mean to tell me that you only eat to perform and feel good? Like you don't even get any joy out of this?" That was my response then at 19. So fast forward, that was, I want to say, 2008. Now, from 2012, when I started my journey, it took me from 2012 to 2025 to finally reach that point that person was talking about. So like Tim has said, it isn't something that happens overnight. And we as coaches would not expect you to completely jump on that, because I wasn't the first. That took years and years to get to the point where I could say the same thing where, no, I only eat because it fuels me and it makes me feel good. Nothing more. I'm not here to tickle my taste buds.
Yeah.
I don't want to have those cravings anymore. But that was for me almost a 15-year journey.
Yeah. It takes a minute. And the thing that, I just said it a few minutes ago, like Netflix gave me a deeper understanding of nutrition. I've been doing functional nutrition and functional health for 11 years. But it was that defining moment where you're like, oh, it's not just bad for my heart and for child. It's literally destroying my mitochondria. It's aging me, slowing me down. It's keeping me overweight. It's keeping me with more body fat than I need to fulfill either I'm going ketogenic or beta oxidation, whatever it is to make energy. And I think it's that continued education. So if you're on the verge of like, I really can't take this anymore, tired of being this way, not going to do a Schmatter pill as a side effect. Like if you really want to get there and you're close, and the visceral side is bothering you because you're a stellar athlete, but you've got that solid male gut, meaning that your organs are covered in fat and you're going to have a heart attack or stroke eventually. Read into the science behind it. It's so easy to understand. Like anyone can go take a Netflix seminar. We should just host one here. We'll have one here in 2026, and then you can come to your gym. You can understand why you're doing what you're doing for the fitness. We talk about that. But then the rest of it is like what you're doing and what goes in your mouth and what doesn't. And then you're like, God, I know that tastes good, but I don't want to be like on dialysis. I don't want to be diabetic. I don't want to be not playing with my grandkids. I don't want someone wiping my ass at home when I'm 90. I don't want that. Like, I want to live a long life worth living, and I can't keep doing what I thought was okay once in a while, and being, pretty average in shape or whatever, and decent body weight, so like super fit and healthy now, and that stuff doesn't even have a place in my home. Like, you can run into us at the grocery store, come into our kitchen, like our pantry fridge, and you're not going to be like, oh, look at that Costco gallon of canola oil.
Yeah.
Cheap ass red meat that it just doesn't happen because the three of us here all have the understanding of what food is. Like, it's no different than when you go to Costco and put the right fuel in your car.
Exactly.
If you need the high octane and you put in the low and you're like, your engine's suffering, the gas mileage is coming down, like you just put in crappy fuel that was not meant for you.
Exactly.
Like, you're not going to go put diesel in your car that's not diesel.
No, I wouldn't do that.
But without that understanding, it's not gonna happen for a lot of people. I think that's where Netflix really comes in, and like Superman saves the day. Like Caitlin throws bits of big M on the back for Netflix, and they're like, "This is why I'm not being a dick and saying no. You can't go to Plane Jumper and have your 7-layer cake. because I'm going to eat it behind your back. No, we're meant to survive it. And here's why. And so that mitochondria, that's where it really
So, and that
fits
brings
for
up
you.
the point getting into the Netflix seminar is it kind of brought mitochondria back to the forefront of my thoughts. And as I was looking at this, I'm like, okay, so mitochondrial diets, as we look at, the thing is the biggest thing in a mitochondrial diet is having a correct metabolic diet, right? And so as we're looking at diet for metabolic function, we're looking at a very low fat, low, no, that was the wrong one. Back up. Let's again. So we're looking at some that's very low in carbohydrate and then basically based in proteins and fats. And so you look at ketogenic based in fat, some protein, and then you look at the carnivore that's protein, fat, probably a little bit more balanced, can be very ketogenic, with looks to it. And so these are things where you see as you're looking at the science that's put out there by Netflix, is that the ketogenic diet and the carnivore diet are kind of the gold standard for taking care of our mitochondria. Okay, so it's like, all right, so this is this, but I know there's something else that's going on, and that something else kind of dives back into some of the things that I had mentioned with the Weston Price. And so when I was reading Weston Price and nourishing conditions and all that, it's like Weston Price went around the world and he not only took photographic evidence of the changes that were happening to people's bone structure. He's a dentist, so we take pictures of their mouths, see their teeth were all fucked up after the first generation born after any foods were introduced. So it's like all this stuff was happening at that point. But he also was going through and he was testing the traditional foods for food value, nutrient diet. And things he found is the foods they were eating were off the charts compared to what even back in the 30s you were able to get in foods. And they were like way higher in nutrient values. And so this was something that's like, there's something going on here. And then the other thing, just a little kind of thing came out of that to me, and I actually mentioned this in the book, is that I left that book feeling like, oh shit, the conquerors that went through and took over the world and wiped out the Mayans and this and that, and all that. Yeah, some of the things that happened there for the societies that they did it to horrible, but the thing is we're left with a lasting legacy of ancestral food knowledge that's been wiped out. And so we no longer know what the fuck to eat. Right? And so it's like, there are stories in the book of a guy healing an Inuit that found a prospector who had gone blind out in the wilderness, was about ready to walk into a grizzly bear. He took him over, fed him tissues out the back of the eye of the fish that he caught in the stream. And within a couple hours, the pain in the guy's eyes was going down. He was able to see again and basically saved this guy's life by knowing what the hell to feed him. And how many of us would know that would be a problem, how to fix it? And there's other stories of, people using foods in a very medicinal way. So we think of Hippocrates saying, let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food. You reverse that, I think, actually. But anyways, a lot of that going on. So, but as I'm looking at this, I think that, what we've lost is why we're eating what we're eating. And so I've started my research looking at different types of foods, looking at herbs and looking at mushrooms and other plants and different things, and saying, why should we really be eating this? Is this supporting our mitochondria? And the thing came back is it's just like, I'm not trying to, eat foods just to fuel the energy systems. So it's not about macro balance, or it's not about, just being keto, whatever. I'm looking to make the system run at as high of a performance level as possible. And so by looking at the foods and saying, now I have all these sources of good micronutrients that can do beneficial things in the body. So we look at some of the polyphenols and epiglycolic, different things like that are in some of the plant things. Those can be very useful. And my thought process brought this back to, okay, using plants medicinally on top of a metabolic diet. And so we're looking at how do we place plants in the proper order in the diet so that the plants are only supporting us, not tearing us down. Because plants also, they have a lot of anti-nutrients. And anti-nutrient, you think of it something the plant has developed to keep animals from overeating it, right? So plants survival mechanisms, it doesn't want to have the animals devour the whole plant, right? And so this is going to be something where there's anti-nutrients, which there's several classes of oxalates and a bunch of different things that you have that are classes of anti-nutrients. And so what we're looking at is like, okay, how much of these anti-nutrients be a good thing? How much of them are bad? It's like everything kind of has a tipping point. So some of those things can actually be, some of them can be beneficial to a certain point, but then just like, it's kind of like if you take, one pill, it's good for you. You take 50, it's going to kill you, And so somewhere in that balance is where we end up with food, where sometimes we're taking beneficial amount and sometimes we're taking that becomes it basically the leaders of our health. It starts taking away from it. So it's either building it or taking away from it. And that's what the book's about. It's just like, let's look at how to build something based off of what's kind of the optimal human diet to keep the mitochondria building in a way that's, that's, working with the synergy of the foods and, hopefully capturing some of the knowledge that we've lost by this thought process, So it's basically just me kind of trying to find some answers to something that I've been curious about for a long time, not really having the right evidence to look through. And the mitochondrial lens was the thing that brought me back to it. And thank you to Methics for bringing that lens back so I could get the focus on the right, on that right thing. So that was kind of what inspired it.
I love it. Now, speaking of the project, is this book going to actually have some facts on the recommended amount of plants that we should be consuming and which ones are the best ones that you recommend based on the studies and research that you put in to the book? Like, am I going to get that? Like, as I'm reading it, am I going to know, well, stay away from this or add that, or is there a certain time?
Yeah, so
all that's going to be laid out.
Yeah, so the idea is and I have a lot of the structure of that in there already, where there's things about, you have certain plants that are foundational, or not, they're not plants that are foundational, certain foods that are foundational. Most of those are animal foods that are foundational in there. And then you have things that are rotational. So there's certain things that should rotate through your diet so you don't get too much, that's what I'm saying, anti-nutrients in that food. So they should rotate benefits, but we don't want to have it all the time. So there's rotational foods. And then there's foods, things like herbs and mushrooms, things that will be used to is kind of a small dose benefit sort of thing. And so it's just like trying to balance all those out and working on, that, and then trying to make that into a simple system that's easy to follow. That's that whole thing there. But it's just that's the basic concept that we're looking diving into. All the things that make that cellular function work, mitochondrial level, because that's where all of our energy is created. Okay. The mitochondria, it's producing the ROS signals. Too much there's too much ROS being produced that causes some of cascade of negative events. But the right amount of ROS, if you create the right amount, it actually signals the cell to say, no, I'm full with quit storing food. And so now we're not loading up fat. So it's understanding kind of the balance of things and how do we sort that system so that it's operating rather than just constantly overloading. And I think one of the things that it hits me with all of the diets, the Paleo Keto Carnivore, all these things, they're all great, but they're not connecting all the dots. And I'm trying to figure out that way to connect the dots. And so that's what this is about. It's me putting this together. And so doing some research and doing the best job I can putting this together.
Absolutely. And so I'm not going to give it away. I obviously see your pyramid that you made. I hope that you get that copyright or trademark soon, because I know that could get stolen. It was actually very good. But for those, obviously Tim is working on this book. I've been lucky enough, Lori probably won't actually see it. And there are some things in there that even I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be pretty good. And so one of those things is Tim's actual pyramid that he created on how he feels of what he feels the human should be consuming diet wise. And there were some things that he touched on that I hadn't seen. So for those who are going to be picking that up, there's going to be some gold in there that I've never seen anywhere else. So definitely grab the book once it's out. Last thing about I apologize what I'm talking about.
I haven't seen the pyramid, so I guess I look forward to seeing your pyramid. It's hard when you're married to the person writing the book. You're the last one to hear it. I'm excited for a new pyramid. There might be a South Park episode if we turn it upside down. Someone sees a picture of it upside down and South Park is on. We'll be the first one on that one. No, that's good. We're all really excited for the book to be done so we could read it. And it all makes a difference. And who knows, maybe Netflix will be like suggested reading Tim's book. Food Mitochondria, I like that. It's awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's just something that hasn't been touched on quite from that age. So the fact that you're trying to find a way to basically tie it all in, like people do not realize that we eat every day. So for the person who can determine the best way to do that consistently, that's a big deal because that's like cracking a code. And even now, it's still something in 2025 that we are still trying to figure out. So clearly, they've gone through this since the Bible times, through the Victorians, through all of these ages. And we're still here trying to crack this code of what's the right way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of great researchers and biohackers out there. And I always say, like, when I'm out, doing things in the gym, it's like, yeah, you think you made this shit up, but somebody else has done it before you. And so, like, in these things, I'm trying to, find, information, stand on the shoulders of people who went before me that have, figured out a lot of things about food and stuff like that we wouldn't know without all the research people have done. So that's something I'm just trying to draw off of the knowledge that we've gathered back since we originally lost most of it, and people studying, digging into what's in these foods and all that. We've seen a big uptick in the last several years of food that, it's like, okay, is it really, first of all? Second of all, if so, what does superfood mean? Does that mean that's all I should eat is superfoods?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now we're out of balance again, right? So it's just kind of like figuring out, what does that mean? We have superfood. It means we have something that has high value in some aspect of it. And then sometimes there's a negative value to it too. And we have to sort that out and decide, where does it fit in a dietary plan.
Superfood makes me think of kale. So
Every time.
I think kale's nasty. And Tim's like, let's have it with eggs. I'm like, thanks for making breakfast. And then a few years later, like, dude, the dirty dozen is now the dirty 13 because it's the dirtiest plant out there. It's kale. It's absolute trash garbage. And then quinoa is so great. And it's healthy grain. And then folks at Dave asked me, someone's like, it's like literal trash. Stop eating it. It's true though. So Tim taking like the truth of the matter with all the foods and putting it into a book will be the first time we'll get like a clear picture of kale's. I'm so glad it's trash because I never liked it. I'll be so honest, right? Yeah. Have a kale chip. I want a potato chip. These kale chips are better than your potato chips. I'm like, did your tongue fall out? How did you eat that tasty anything? Like, I don't eat any chips, but that was like the conversation 4 or 5 years ago.
Kale chips coated in the.
Remember we made our own? Oh,
yes.
God.
Coated in nutritional yeast. Yeah, the nutritional yeast makes it taste like cheese. That's it. That's it.
It makes it taste like cheese.
As long as
tell ourselves
that's when you're dairy free and you're not eating cheese. It tastes kind of like cheese.
Can I also say that being able to have dairy again on carnivore and not getting sick from it, eating the raw cheeses, the raw milk, or cheeses from other country is the bee's knees. Because yeast on kale chips that taste like cheese doesn't taste like cheese. Cheese tastes like cheese, and I've been enjoying it for 5 weeks now. So
It's
All these little sides. Sorry. That's
no, but this is
Oh,
gold.
we're keeping it real. I'll take I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm like, hey, this birthday cake made out of like crushed leaves and some ground up twig and some cinnamon is amazing. Happy second birthday. And Ken's like, wow. At that point, you already know what cake tastes like. So it doesn't. But now we're not going to have it anyway, so it's okay. But the point is, when you try to make fake cheese taste like cheese, you're getting more chemicals from the bad oils anyway. So it's kind of a lose-lose.
But yes, and then but still, but you guys should be thanking us for going down that road, so you guys didn't have to of trying all these different things and going through all of these. This is literally what is made up a true fitness journey.
Yeah.
We could go back and you'd be like, yeah, I remember eating kale and it was superfood, and you guys doing the chips, like all these things. Like we could kind of look back and be like, everything led us all here to what I would consider the closest to truth diet-wise
So
across the board.
Yeah, and I mean, kale brings up a really good point too. Is it's like, yeah, so kale, it's notoriously bad for holding on to pesticides because of the texture of the leaves and all that. So anything that gets sprayed on it, and even the organic ones are questionable in most cases on that. And so it's something where, but kale has a ton of really good nutrients in it. Right? Great, this is a great food to eat. It also has a fairly high amount of some of the anti-nutrients. And so it's like, there's a balance to that too, and so it's like, okay, is this the best choice to get those nutrients? And so in some cases, a food that has some anti-nutrients may be one of the better choices to get that nutrient because it's hard to get. But, that's something that we, again, want to be selective. Yeah, we want to be selective on what it is and how much of it we eat. That's some of the things that we want to pay attention to.
I was going to say you're a vegan heartbreaker.
Vegan heartbreak.
What else smoothie?
I do have a chapter in the book because
Oh, do you?
I've got a chapter in the book that was basically I kind of pre-wrote some of the chapter in the book to give my clients who is vegetarian, so using milk products on that, but due to religious reasons, which I'm not going to argue with that, but what I did is I laid out, this is the best way you can eat on that. There's a lot of cautionary things.
We're always looking for that.
So there's a lot of cautionary things when you're eating a vegetarian diet. There's nutrients that are extremely hard to get in an absorbable form. So the absorbable forms of them is the big problem for a lot of things, is that you can't, you get it. This plant has, amino in it, but you're not getting that much of that, out of it because it's locked in there too hard. And so there's things that, we have these limitations. So, if you have the ability to have milk and or eggs in the diet, there's a chapter that's built in there that's going to help you do that in the best way possible to support your mitochondrial health and everything there. But yeah, it's something that, certainly where with the things that I've learned, I would recommend a vegetarian or vegetable-based diet. But I would, I would say that if you are there and you have a reason that's non-negotiable to you, there's certainly things that you can do to mitigate any damage.
That's an important chapter. Yeah. I think I got a chapter on that. He has more than half the book written. I know that much, but I don't know beyond. I wouldn't know about pyramid.
Still on
Have we named it? Like
the book,
like the Jesus pyramid to Jesus teas. Oh. It's coming in strong.
It's a kind of a initial name, which may change. So it's like we're still massaging that down there.
Okay.
Is the mitochondrial food pyramid
trademark.
So
Trademark.
That's a
Copyrighted.
trademark. Guys can't use that. Sticks it down.
that's it.
Zero sugar fitting. Aaron Hine makes the best drinks. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah. So
Don't worry. Not even getting kicked. We're just keeping it real. We don't work for them.
yeah. So
Sugar.
And then I'll be honest too, on the whole kickbacks. If you're in the kale industry, you're not supposed to. But we're just talking facts.
All of a sudden,
Nobody,
car rolls out of your house tonight.
nobody from lettuce came at us and told us to eat this. It's this is the first choice, guys.
Well, butter lettuce, it's where it's at.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
Maeve's having a heart attack with all their what's their place nationals?
I still keep sharp and
For Cold Bay. They're probably
coming in.
Yes, the Chipotle lettuce problem.
Yes, that's why I brought up romaine. I haven't had vegetables in 5 weeks. I don't even know when we go back to. Butter lettuce is where it's at. Sorry.
But there we go, guys. So, obviously, be on the lookout for the members here. You guys will obviously hear when Tim's books out. But if you aren't a member here, I'm sure if you're following us on Instagram at CrossFit SR925, if you're following Coach Tim 925, I know you guys are already following Corey. That's no question asked. But you'll probably get the update on the book then from any of those platforms. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. We'll get back. That's all we got. Thank you, Tim, for sharing that. We can't wait to actually get that hard copy.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.